welcome back to Team Brown, our podcast that we started. We're excited about it. Thank you for checking out the first video, but thank you for returning to this video, and we're excited to do this again. It's a lot of fun, this part. I don't know if you've done audio technical in the past, or if you just like to get your ideas all out on paper, or if you like write books or like write in a diary or something. Like it's just good to get it out. And so this is kind of therapeutic for us as well, that we get a chance to talk out our feelings and talk out our past, and even be able to share perspectives, because sometimes when we're having a conversation, you don't always get your perspectives out the way that you want to, and sometimes the dialogue gets in the way of being able to really say things that you want to say or that you mean. And so this is helpful for both of us as well, because we get a chance to say it and then hear your spouse say it, and you're like, oh yeah, that's exactly what that was. And it's really it like reinforces something in you that is exciting. It says that yeah, she loved me then, and she loves me now, and everywhere in between. And so it's cool. I got a chance to watch the last video. I'm probably half of those YouTube views, by the way. I got a chance to watch it a bunch of times and listen to it on podcasts and stuff. So we're still working the bugs out. We're still trying to figure out a couple things. We're adding the podcast that we're kicking to Apple and kicking to a couple different places. We're putting that on our YouTube audio as well. So we're figuring out some of that as well. So stick with us whenever we're doing some of the technical. But that's a crazy big ramp. Hopefully we got new music to the front of this, and it makes it a little bit easier to see. But that's a pretty good ramp for hi. How are you doing?
Yeah. And I'm going to look at the camera this time.
We're working it out.
I didn't look at the camera last time. I think I was telling Jeremy I was a little bit in shock. I think that sitting here like, oh my gosh, this is actually happening, because something that I've prayed for a long time, that we could one day come together and use our pain to help others, and just let that encourage you that your pain serves a purpose. And here's proof, 12 years later, but yeah, we're going to be able to help so many more couples this way.
And talk about, we have conversations pretty often about how in our faith experience, right, mm-hmm. that our Christian faith experience is, it isn't unblemished. Mm-hmm. So it's not imperfect, or it's not perfect, it's imperfect. Yeah. But it also doesn't, it comes with sacrifice, but it also comes with some pain, right? And lots so talk about my apprehension to wanting to share that pain as a part of a testimony, and our walk, kind of our struggle with that, because you're super good at it, but I'm not crazy good at wanting to relive parts that are crazy dark, mm-hmm. right? There's not a lot of fun in sharing. First of all, the word testimony I know is a churchy word, but like just sharing a story. Like our story has some places in it that I think can really help people, mm-hmm. but it also hurts to tell. Yeah. And so I don't know, talk with us about that.
Well, I think it hurts to relive anything, and our testimony definitely has a lot of dark places, and I think that was always the part that was hard for you, is you don't want to relive it, remember it. It's kind of easier to just stuff it away and put it in a little box and not open that box. And I'm very opposite, where it's more healing for me and therapeutic to use it to help others, because then in my mind, this didn't happen for no reason. Right. And there's value in what I went through. And then I can kind of see lived out in real life, real time, the people that it's helping. But I'm super proud of you for sharing.
Well, I'm going to, my defense in this, my guy defense, for all of my fellows out there, my guy defense is we are waffles, right? We keep things compartmentalized. We're boxes. And so a lot of what I experience, I put into seasons, and I kind of stand on, there's a part in Ecclesiastes 3 that talks about for everything there's a season. There's a season for this, and there's a season for that, and there's a season for good, and there's a season for bad. And I put that in my bad season box, which is hey, there's this part of our experience that was awesome and crazy good, and there's a part of our experience that was really rough. Mm-hmm. And each one has a box. Yeah. And I don't go open Pandora's box again, trying to relive or refeel some of that. But but God also entrusted us with the story.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and we're not trying to, wherever you're at in your walk of faith, or even if you're not interested in walk of faith, that's totally okay. And you're welcome here. But that helps inform our life, right? Our faith experience helps inform how we behave and how we raise our kids and how we treat each other as a family. And so this whole journey isn't easy and isn't always fun. And for me, it has boxes, but God's entrusted us to actually go back to the boxes and say, like, be willing to help people when times are rough, right? So I've had a couple friends that have gone through similar stuff that I've gone through, and some of them might be watching as well, but or listening to the podcast, and there are parts where my story looks similar to what they're experiencing in their story now, but I've already gone to the other side of it, right? And so it can be a blessing to them to be like, hey, there's good on the other side of this. Yeah. And this dark hallway isn't just an endless dark hallway into nothing that just hurts. It's on the other side of this, there's good. Mm-hmm. I don't know, like talk with me, because you've worked with a lot of ladies, or you've actually had just friendships with a lot of folks where you've been able to help them in kind of a similar girl side of that.
Yeah, I think it's helpful for people to have a human being in front of them that they know and they work alongside, and it's not someone we're not someone famous. We're not these, we're not pastors, we're not counselors, we're not therapists, we're not physicians. We're just real people that have been through some awful things, and now we just want to give back. And I think even for the women that God puts in my circle to reach, it just helps them to say, like, oh, I know you, I work with you, I know your work ethic, I know your character, and you're going through this too. Sometimes you just want someone to come alongside you can relate to. It's relatable. Yeah. We're not like these people that are way up here that, maybe it's possible for them because they're special,
Yeah. I think so often, like in our life, for instance, God uses humility as a tool, just not because of my status and not because of how elevated I am or how important I am, but rather because I'm not a threat to you, and because I'm not what's the word I'm looking for? Because I'm not your boss, or not because I'm not in any way fighting for dominance or anything like that. Like, I can just be your friend. Yeah. And from a position of being a friend, like, I can kind of say whatever I want because I'm not going to hurt your feelings. I'm not going to get you in trouble, and I'm not going to get in trouble. Like, we can just be honest. Mm-hmm. And let's just start there. And I know we're talking a lot about kind of how we share our story of our family to other folks, but I also think that's just true about being authentic. Helps, Yeah,
it's important. It's important to be consistent. I always say, on Facebook, at home, at church, at work, be the same person. Don't be a chameleon, because people want to trust you, and they're going to look at your character, and they're going to trust your behaviors more than they're going to trust your words. For me, I'm not really ashamed of my faith, because I know that without God, I wouldn't be here, literally would not be alive. And so that's where my faith comes from, is I give him all the credit and all the glory for still keeping me on this earth and giving me another day to live, because I was in a really dark place where I struggled with suicidal thoughts and self-harm, and God, for me, brought me out of that dark place. And so I give him everything now, and I live it out in front of people, and I'm not ashamed.
Right. Well, and I think, like, we often say, kind of in joking to each other, we often say, like, we went to the depths, and then we got to rock bottom, and then we dug a hole, right? And I know that just reminds me, kind of reinforces to me that, like, God brings us from all this stuff and is willing to meet us wherever we're at. And so that's kind of starts off the conversation with why we started this. And, like, earlier this week, or even today, you said, I'm proud of you for being willing to tell the story, or at least being willing to walk with us through opening up some of those boxes of pain that hurt, which are not fun to open up. So let's turn it for some fun, because I don't want it to be all this, because I live in this other place of fun often. But what is something as our family unit, as husband and wife, and even as parents, like what is something that you find is something that we value as a family that maybe you haven't seen other people that you know really value as their family unit, or something that maybe they value it, but they just don't put a ton of importance on it, right? Or they don't really make it a priority. And so what is something that you see us do where you're like, this kind of sets us apart? This is our, this is the contrast maybe between us and what you might see other families live. Like, what's something that you've seen us do where you think we're on the right track, or that you think is really, we're onto something here?
I think being real in front of our kids, even in our times of confrontation and conflict, our kids will see us argue. We're not perfect.
Yeah.
We do disagree. We do get in arguments, and our kids will see us. I mean, we don't fight anymore. That's another thing we can talk about. We used to go there, but we don't go there anymore, because now having our family back, it's not worth it to us.
Sure.
It's not worth it to us to let that, rob our space and our joy and our time. So things we do now is we work things out really quickly, but we live it out in front of our kids. Like, they see us have conflict and then resolve it. So conflict resolution in front of them. We don't go into a separate room to talk. If we have a conflict, we'll talk about it in front of them, and then we'll make up right away in front of them. Like, we'll ask for forgiveness, apologize, say we're sorry, and then show affection. We always make sure we show affection to our kids.
Means you give me kisses? Is that what that means? All right.
Hugs
Just
and kisses.
making sure we know what that means.
Hugs and kisses, so they know, like,
yeah.
Okay, this is what it looks like. It's okay to get upset.
Right.
The Bible says be angry, but don't sin. Yeah. So being angry is something that's going to happen. It's an emotion that you're supposed to feel, but it's what you do in that moment. And so we do get angry sometimes, but we choose to work it out. We choose to ask for forgiveness. We choose to eat crow.
Yeah. What does that mean? Explain eating crow to the audience and to me.
We throw ourselves under the bus,
Fair enough.
I don't know. Just means admitting, coming back and saying, I was wrong. Yep. I was wrong. And being humble and coming from a place of humility and transparency. And our kids get to see that. I think that's really healthy for the kids.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, like I grew up in a world, like we talked about on the last episode, but also if you know us, we grew up in a world of faith. And so like sometimes in the faith experience, people like to sanitize, kind of like on social media. They like to sanitize the version of who they are when they're at church, or the version of them when they're at small group or just living life, and also on the internet. But in real life, it looks more real, and it looks, there's parts when you get mad, there's parts when you cry, and you don't put that on Facebook, you don't put that on YouTube typically, or you probably don't even bring that to church, and which is like that's why you go to church, because you're busted or because you're broken, and so like I guess my point is sometimes whenever you live that faith in that faith world, there was a behavior of, I'm going to sanitize, I'm going to represent this version of who I am. It's kind of like going on a first date. It's like, I want you to see this part of me. I've got this other part that I'm not going to show you, but I want you to see this. Sometimes it feels like that, both on social media and also in church, which is funny that they parallel. But I think there's value in, because as a kid, you didn't get to always see that. But my kids get to see that, and because we do place value on, let's just live it real. And live it raw. I mean, we make mistakes, right? And I imagine you do too. And we're happy to tell our kids, hey, I was wrong. I was wrong here. I'm happy to tell you, this part, I didn't have coffee this morning, and I hadn't had a meal earlier today. And I'm just a grouch. So but willing to eat crow. Even
to the kids, like if I do something where I'm frustrated or stressed, or maybe I worked a night shift and I didn't get very much sleep the next day and I'm a zombie, I have to come back to my kids if I responded the wrong way or I was negative. and say, Mom's sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm just
Sure.
really tired. Like, do you forgive me? I'm so sorry. And even do that with your kids, I think is healthy in a family, to come to them when you're wrong and you even mess up with them and say, you know what, Mom shouldn't have said that, or Dad shouldn't have said that, and we're really sorry that hurt your feelings. And then talk about it. The other things we let our kids do is we let them talk about their feelings with us, because we want them to always feel safe coming to us. So even the littlest things, we let them just come to us and tell us how they feel. Like, tell me about that. Are you feeling sad? Why are you feeling sad?
Yeah.
Did someone hurt your feelings? Well, what hurt your feelings? We want to hear their conversation. We don't want to create an environment where they stuff things and hold stuff in, because we've seen that do a lot of damage to us in the past. So we want them to express it.
Yeah, and I think from a family perspective, I think there's value in our kids knowing that we're not perfect. Knowing that we're real. We make mistakes. Maybe we don't always say it the right way. Oftentimes my kids will be like, why can Dad stay up later than me? Or why can Dad say certain words like stupid or dumb, or like things that we don't let them say? And it's like, all right, yeah, there's cognitive dissonance with this, right? There's this something where you're piecing it together as a kid. I want you to come to me with those questions. They're not always easy answers even. Sometimes they're unfair. But it's good that you feel open to coming and being like, why doesn't this make sense? Because there's parts of life as you grow up where you're like, you can either take all those feelings and put them in your bed, under your bed or whatever, and like keep them in your room and just keep them inside yourself, and you don't share that to your parents or your friends, and then you stuff those feelings. Or you can let those feelings be out there, and you can work on those feelings now rather than 15 years from now coming around the bend having to work them out in counseling or whatever. So I think there's value in that experience. Okay, so part of, I guess, we didn't plan this, as you can tell. We don't have a bullet list of the topics that we're covering. But part of our family values is sharing, being authentic, right? Is being open and honest in front of our kids and to each other. Of being able to say like, I was wrong. Okay. So, and that's okay. There are also parts whenever I'm going to tag the end of yours, which is something that you often tell other ladies whenever they're going through times, whenever they are not pleased with their spouse. Okay. And I would say that this happens with us whenever one of us is mad at the other of us, whether we're justified or not. It's always important to be affectionate. It's probably the most PC way of saying that. Affectionate with each other whenever, by the end of the day, like literally real quick, not just to say I'm sorry, but real quick to be like, this isn't I'm going to kick you out to the other room. I need my space. I'm going to go drive away. This isn't I need to isolate myself. This is you get your behind over here and let's hang out, and so that's super valuable because.
You mean being intimate?
Sure, but even more than that, I think that just showing I still love you even though I'm ticked off. I still love you even though you did something that was unjust or that something that I don't care for. I still choose love. Yeah. And I think that's a huge value for us, which is always choosing love, even if we're ticked, even if we're at a place where we're not, even if we're righteously upset with one another of like, hey, that was wrong. Like, but being willing to be affectionate.
Yeah. Sometimes that's the last thing you want to do is let someone touch you that has hurt you, or you touch them and they hurt you, but you need to come back together and we
don't mean physically hurt. We mean
yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Just to spell it out a little bit for you.
Hurt your feelings.
Right.
Someone that has emotionally hurt your feelings or mentally, but to come back together and to show affection. Yeah.
What's another value that you see that we put a lot of emphasis on as a family that maybe other families you've seen, either it's in the mix but it's not that much of a priority, or they just they don't put any value in it at all? Like, what's something that you see us do where you're like, I think we're on that?
Well, I think we're different from a lot of families, and we try not to compare ourselves to lots of different families. Sure. But I think peace, we fight for peace. Like,
okay, what's that mean? What do you mean by that?
Making sure that there's peace in the home. So arguments aren't worth it, right?
Right.
It doesn't need to go there. It doesn't need to go to him wanting to leave and driving away. It doesn't need to get to that point. It doesn't need to keep escalating. Sometimes I need to shut my mouth, you know?
What?
Yeah, before he gets in the car and drives away, right?
How about that?
I can control the peace in the home.
Right. By letting the thing that feels like a hill to die on go. Like,
my actions.
Sure. Okay, go ahead.
Because in the past, our past, our very broken relationship before we were, right, what kind of led to us separating and divorcing, a very small piece of it, because there's a lot of things that happened.
Right.
But I did that. I didn't know. I was very broken and hadn't done any trauma therapy yet, and we got married, and I brought in a lot of baggage I never talked to anyone about. I kind of kept it all secret, and all this stuff started coming out when you're married, you know, all the cray-cray. You can't hide it. And he pushed all my trigger buttons. This one.
Not on purpose.
And this one.
I promise it wasn't on purpose.
And I pushed all his trigger buttons.
True story.
And so there was explosive fights, explosive anger, and driving away. And I would be like, I don't care. I don't care if you leave or drive away, right?
Yeah,
it was
sure.
Just like,
and shed quarters, once again, guys, thanks for enduring animal sounds and planes and all the stuff. So
there wasn't a lot of peace in our home.
Right.
So now we fight for peace, which means making sure you sleep in the same bed at night.
That's right.
And that you don't go to bed with, an upset stomach and uneasy feelings, knowing that, there's discord in your family. You know?
I think also, like, there are times to fight the battles. Mm-hmm. There are times, and I don't mean physically, once again, there are times to reinforce what's important to you and to say, you know what, that's not something I'm going to tolerate, right? There are times for that. There are also times to be like, yeah, this is important, but it's not more important than you, right? And I think it took some getting used to that idea in my brain of not every hill's a hill to die on. Right, everything is so darn important to me, right? And I'm a passionate person. You might be like this, and my wife certainly knows that's the case with me. Whenever I have an idea in my head, some kind of ideology, I'm like, hey, this is I have bumpers here. These are thresholds, and if somebody crosses them, then here's how I feel about it, and here's what I think. Not everything is 100%. Not everything needs to be, escalated to the top, and some hills are just let it go. Like, it's okay to just let it go and choose peace first. Yeah. For somebody who's passionate about all the things, that's a hard one for me. And that was a hard one initially for us, which is like, I don't tolerate this, or this isn't my thing. And so all the other stuff takes a back seat to this one thing. But I love you. So shouldn't I love you take priority above I'm passionate about all the things? It should. And it took a minute for me to get it straight.
Yeah, and there has to be compromise in your relationships or your marriage. It's not all about you. It can't be selfish. It has to be selfless. There are some things that you love and you're passionate about, like what Jeremy was saying. And those are his things, and those are always going to be his things, like music. I'm not musical. He is musical. He has a gift to play by ear and to sing. I don't have those gifts. So that is something that he's naturally good at and he likes to do in his free time, is to go away and play music. And I need to be okay with that.
Sure.
And things I like to do is I like to walk outside in the backyard. I would walk for hours if I could. But that's peaceful to me, just walking outside on our property, just walking and talking to God. That's what brings me peace. I love that. I don't know. And going to the Goodwill and thrift stores and buying items that are very cheap but good quality,
right,
but
sure.
saying, I got this for $1 or $2.
Do you see her eyes light up?
Yeah.
This is her experience.
And this is something he hates. He hates going to Goodwill and thrift stores, right?
Yeah.
But he knows I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So you let that
let
that
go.
die, right?
Yeah.
Let it go and just keep the peace. That's what we're talking about. Keep the peace. Even though he doesn't agree with it, and maybe music takes up a long time, or maybe I'm taking up a lot of time, walking. These are things we love that refill us, so we just, you compromise.
Yeah, I mean, and also like initially for us, we have a lot of this similar backstory from a environment standpoint, right? Because we grew up in the same area, we went to the same, we know the same people, we grew up in the same church and things like that too. And so like, you expect us, or at least in young us, we expected to like, I kind of expected you to like everything I like. And to want to do everything I wanted to do. And it's like, yeah, you're not a dude, first of all. And second, which is great for me because I'm super attracted to you. But also like that, it's just not, it's not the proper expectation.
Yeah.
I think sometimes with marriage, like we have an expectation on our spouse. In expectation, we've learned this through our life, which is when you have an expectation, it's inevitable that expectation is going to be violated. It's going to be totally broken, and that creates offense. It happens with family all the time with us, like which is like there are things where you kind of expect your family to want this particular outcome, but if they don't care about that outcome, your expectation of what should happen can be broken, right? And it creates this place where you can get upset. And that happens with us all the time, or at least it used to in our 20s, where I would have this expectation that you would want to hang out and play guitar with me or play piano forever, video games, or God knows what. And she's like, no.
Or watch movies, I don't know.
Yeah, she's just, and so part of us being uniquely us and allows us keys, right? Like it allows us keys to unlock doors of like relationships with other folks, right? And so like for instance, my music side of me unlocks conversations with other people who are into that, right? The video game thing allows me to resonate with my kid right now. Like, and there are other things in the world where there are parts of you where you're empathetic and you like to hear people's story, and you're a lot about narrative. Like, tell me your whole story, not just a piece of it. That's not me. That's not built in me at all, but it's totally you. And that's great. Like, but God gives us those keys to unlock parts of communities, to be able to share the burden with other folks and to help. And that's true of our kids too. Like there are parts of us that we get to really, Grace, right? Our daughter is she's super talented at music. She's not into it right now, but she's super talented at it. And so that's a part where I can help be a part of that. And Rem is into video games right now, and so like Legos and stuff like that. And it's like, all right, that's my part too. Mom just cooked tortillas with them for the first time ever. And it's like, this is this piece of mom where I would never do that. But mom loves our kids, and she's like, I'll do that. It's not my thing I'm into cooking or anything, but it's something I'm willing to do. So I guess my point is sometimes expectations, when you set the wrong expectations or even just have expectations to begin with, they can be unreasonable and they can be violated. Mm-hmm. And then also the reason why we're so unique is the fact that they are intentionally, God built us to be unique so that we have keys to unlock other communities of people. So
yeah. And we've always said expectations set up your relationship for failure. Really do. Sure. Because like he said, they're unrealistic, and you can't have this expectation that when you get married to someone, they're going to be molded and shaped into what you want them to be. That's not what God created them to be. They need to be able to be free to fully be who they're created to be, and to use their gifts. And my job as a wife is to come alongside him and make him better. And inversely me for you, or not maybe inversely, but conversely. And to be his biggest fan and cheerleader, and to cheer him on and to affirm him and to build him up, and as a wife, and not tear him down, and tell him he's doing a good job, and call out those things in him that I see, the greatness in him that I see. And him for me, like he was my biggest cheerleader when I was going through school. It took me like 10 years to graduate.
Okay.
I did like one class at a time. You did it.
Yeah. Talk about it. Talk about school.
So it's hard when you're a mom and a wife and you're going to school. I did everything backwards. Everything. Got married. No. Got married. Mm-hmm. Had kids. Had a child. Got divorced. Got remarried. Then decided to go to school in my 30s. Yeah. Well, late 20s, 30s. I switched my degree a couple times. We moved state.
Threw some wrenches in your education plan.
Yeah. So was hard. It was really hard. And, you know, late nights, you're sacrificing time with your husband and your family to get this degree. And I did one class at a time. It took a long time, but I eventually got there, you know, 10 years later. I was a 36-year-old graduate.
But so here, tell everyone why the degree? Like, why is that important? Or why, at least maybe 5 years ago, why was that important to you? And then today, why do you think it might one day be important again? Like, those are two different answers, but it's the same degree. And so...
Well, initially when I started school, it was because they put Eden in my arms in the delivery room, and I looked down at her and I thought, oh, I want to give her a good life. Because at that time I worked in labor and delivery. I still do for the last 20 years, but I work all around nurses and people that have degrees and people that are educated. So in my mind, it was always kind of in the ether that in order to be successful, you need to have a degree, because that's what I was around. That's all I saw at work. So I started going to school initially for nursing, and then in California I was on the wait list for 2 years, and we moved, and I got into nursing school for Arizona when we were in California. So it's like, oh, that's not going to work because I can't move back to Arizona. So switched my degree and decided to go to Grand Canyon University in Arizona for a Bachelor of Science in Behavioral Health. And I chose that degree because it really resonated with all my insides. My soul like just bleeds for people, and people that are hurting and that have trauma and that have emotional pain. And I wanted to understand more of me too, because I struggled with all those things as well. So I did this degree and eventually I got there. But all that to say, Jeremy was my biggest fan, and he cheered me on the whole time. I wanted to quit so many times. I'm like, I can't do this, babe. It's too hard. I can't do this. It's hard.
Because I think it's never about ability, right? It was never about like, hey, I'm not intelligent enough. It was always about like, this sucks. Like, it's not fun to do.
And for me, I'm not one of those people where, like, Jeremy was always very bright, naturally smart, and he has his master's, and I always had to work for my grades in school. I always got really good grades, but I had to work so hard. Like, I had to read every word of every chapter and then reread it and take notes and reread my notes. Like, I had to study for tests. Like, I'm not one of those people I just can like blow through something.
But crushed it. But like 4.0, like so like, you know, well worth the effort. But I think so I guess what I'm trying to drive at is, initially you kind of heard like from why did I get my degree? I got my degree because I thought I needed to be at a certain level or status, or I'm around other people that make me feel less than. Just naturally, not because they're making me feel that way, but because I feel that way. But so it came out of it kind of came out of that attitude, right? But like, now that you have it, you're like, oh, I'm going to be able to use this in the future to help other folks because of stuff I've learned, right? And I think I'm in that same way. It's like, for what I do currently for a job, like, I don't necessarily need my master's degree, but it was worthwhile to get. And initially my motivations for getting the degree were to please family, to set myself up for success in the future, to level up my job to be a manager or in leadership at my job. So it was all these other things that now don't mean much to me, you know, but I think it's like, oh, God let me step on that stepping stone to do the next thing, right? And to really prepare me to be in a place where when that next thing comes, I can take advantage of it, or I can get in front of it. Because without it, maybe that opportunity wouldn't be available. I strongly believe that God doesn't show us the whole path. It's just the next couple feet. And then you got to be willing to say like, yes, okay, I'm going to do that. You know, yes, I'm willing to say yes. So that's another value in our home. So not just education being a value, but a value in our house is like saying it's okay not to know the whole thing before we step out in faith.
Oh, faith is huge in our home. Faith is huge. We live it out in front of our kids, and they know our story, and they know we're not perfect, and they know mom and dad have been divorced, and we tell them, this is your story too. This is your story as much as it is ours to tell, because Eden, God chose you as the catalyst to bring our family back together. And then Remington, you were the promise from God that was a symbol of love, being restored and reunited. And he was born on Valentine's Day after we got remarried.
It's pretty cool.
So, yeah.
No big deal.
It's pretty amazing. But we tell them that, and so now Eden, even at school, she has friends that they do prayer requests at school. And she'll come home and she'll be like, Mom, so-and-so's family is going to get a divorce. But I told them our story, and I said, my mom and dad were divorced, and don't lose hope, because your mom and dad could get back together too, just like my parents. And so now our kids are taking our story and giving back hope. And that's what it's all about. And that's why we live faith out in front of them authentically, and we pray with them. If they have prayer requests, we pray for them and with them, and then we believe for it to happen. And it happens. And every January 1st, we do dream boards with them. For the beginning of the year, what are things that desires in their heart they want to see come to pass? Because God says, write it down and make it plain. So we have them write it down, and that's in Habakkuk. And they prayed for a farm for 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty wild. Like stuff. I'm not a big feels that's not a part of something that just naturally comes to me. So like it's something that we do as a family on the 1st every year, and we write it down and we keep it. And we take pictures of it and we pray on it. Yeah. But you come to look at it, and we just looked at ours like a week ago, and a bunch of stuff off that list are checked off that weren't true 9 months ago. Yeah. But they're true now, and which is crazy. Like that's crazy to think of. And this isn't like I want to be happier or I want to have a new car. Like this is stuff that you really have to pray to make happen. And it was just wild that it's like, you know what, this is something that is of value, but it's also a proven result for me. Yeah. And so it's pretty cool. We're going to wrap it up just because I think we're at our 20-minute mark. But like, do you have anything that you want to tack on to the end with either? Let's recap things that we value: faith, hope, living with peace, being authentic. Is there anything that you want to add to the mix before we call it a day?
There's lots more, but we can, do those in more podcasts to come. But yeah, I think it's important in your family to cast vision, right? God says, without a vision, my people will perish. And that's why we cast vision for our kids in our home and talk about the desires of their heart, because God says, I'm faithful to give you the desires of your heart. Yeah. And talk about those things with your kids, tonight, and with your husband, and figure out their dreams and share your dreams, and just kind of pray on those and watch what God does. Just sit back and watch what God does.
Yeah. And for me, we are always about practical application to things that feel real heady, right? And by that I mean, like we talked about, don't stay mad and choose to be affectionate. That's a practical application to something that you can implement in your life now. Dream boards are an example of something that's tangible. Literally, you can put your hands on it. Those are all practical steps in a marriage that you can start doing today. And we care a lot about not just talking about it in the ether, not just talking about it generally, but really making a tangible difference in families' lives and in our own life. And it's something that you have to remind yourself of like, what are we missing here? Yesterday, we had an experience that was like, we just hit roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. And sometimes even literally we hit this with trying to go to dinner as a family. Yeah. But we value family time. But it was like, why are we so bent out of shape about this? And it's like, I hadn't eaten food all day. We had to be real about, okay, well, you know what? Let's just know that that's kind of what's informing how we're behaving right now, and also kind of the anxiety that we feel. And let's just go to the next spot. No worries. It doesn't matter if we do sushi or this other thing. Like, let's just eat food. And that's a practical application of saying, not every hill's a hill to die on, right? Hey, it doesn't matter where we eat. It doesn't matter what our preference is here, because it's not that big of a deal. Let's just choose peace and have fun today. Yeah. So we hope that, for me, I want to just leave you with, we really try to make this practical and tangible. It's a lot of fun to do this with you, babe. And it's, if there's anything that you want to hear about from us, please feel free to drop it in the comments. Not that that's something that you would do, or just text us, because you're probably our fam. But anything else before we go?
No.
All right. God bless you guys. Thanks for hanging with us today.